The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Hope this Wednesday is treating you well, hump day. We've got a few items to discuss. This is going to be a pretty comprehensive show. Lots to get to. Offensive free agency preview for the Commanders. This is how I kind of see free agency in my lens as it pertains to this team. I'm going to tell you what I think they ultimately do. I'm going to tell you some of the things that I would like to see them do. And then we will kind of meld the two together to come up with sort of a game plan as to what I expect from Adam Peters. I do expect aggression, but again, I don't think he's going to absolutely go nuts, okay? But I do expect him to come away with some pretty significant items early on in the process. I do not think this is going to be one of those times where we stand pat, let all the high-priced items go off the shelf, and then walk in with our chest puffed out and a bunch of money to spend only to go get some, meager minor items. I don't think that's what's going to happen here. But we're going to get our fair share of those as well, okay? That said, as we always do before we get to the main event of the evening, let's first take a look at some house cleaning, right? So I'm going to keep you abreast of this the best I can. I'll give you the game, as much of it as I've got, when it comes to matters of the branding and the jerseys, helmets, etc. I don't know anything, but this guy right here does. His name is Zach Cohen. He does not miss when it comes to matters of NFL uniforms, helmets, etc. So this is the guy that I think most of us have been getting our information from. If you're not following him on social media, I'd advise you to do so. If you're not following him, I advise you to check out his feed every so often just to make sure you're up on the latest that has to do with the Commanders. I'm going to play you this latest short from Zach Cohen, basically breaking down where the Commanders stand right now, a new piece of information regarding the helmets, and kind of get you up to speed on where we are with the Commanders branding, uniforms, helmets, etc. Take a listen.
Let's recap everything we know so far about the upcoming Commanders rebrand, including a new piece of information I just found out that I think many Washington fans are going to like. Why don't we start with this new piece of info? So sources tell me that Washington plans to bring back a glossy paint finish to their helmet to replace the matte helmet finish. Personally, I like how a matte finish looks on some helmets. I like how it looks on the Commander's helmet, but I'm not going to argue against a glossy finish. I think it'll stand out really nicely with the gold accents that are going to be a part of this helmet. Because if you remember, back in October, when I first reported that the Commanders filed 4 new uniforms for 2026, I said pretty much everyone expects this to be the permanence away uniform for the Commanders. And for those that are new here, yes, everything else from this point on in this video, I've already talked about at length. You can go check out all the videos in the playlist in my bio. It's got a new look to hopefully make it easier for you. But the expectation still remains from me, from others around the organization, that the burgundy home look they had for that Super Bowl era will be their primary permanent home look. Other questions I've gotten that I can answer today. Will there be a new primary logo? I seriously doubt it. I've not seen any documentation of a new logo, unlike what I've seen for the Rams and Titans. Technically, anything could happen, but at this point, I'm like 99% sure they're rolling with this again. Another question I get about this alternate uniform I reported for them to get is, what will it look like? Now, technically, they could roll in with that hideous black uniform. But I think it's easy to speculate what the alternate uniform could look like based off the recent clues we've talked about here. So while I haven't heard or seen specific details about what this alternate uniform could look like, remember, they've really started to incorporate a lot more spear elements into their designs. And they posted this after the Super Bowl. Notice the spears. So let me know what you want to see. I'm going to continue to update y'all about the Commanders, all the other teams with uniform or logo changes, and really, like I say all the time, right? I love uniforms, always love logos and all that stuff that goes with it. I'm just happy that it seems like many of y'all care about it as much as I do.
That was Zach Cohen talking about the uniforms and him talking about where we are in the process. Anybody looking for the W to be removed from the helmet, not happening. I myself am a fan of the matte look. Sounds like they're going to do away with it. I feel like Josh Harris is trying to get this look as close as he can to the Redskins look as he possibly can without crossing the line. Obviously, you're not going to get the old logo and you're not going to get the name back, but you're getting just about everything else back, essentially. So that's kind of where we are with that. Don't want to spend a bunch of time on it because we've talked about it a ton. We're going to probably talk about it a ton more, but we got all off season to talk about the uniforms. After free agency and the draft and everything happens, they're going to roll all of this stuff out, and we'll be talking about it for weeks upon weeks as this team continues to reshape itself in the image of its new ownership group, headed by Josh Harris and company. So let's get to free agency, offensive side of the football. That's all we're going to talk about tonight. We'll save the defensive side for another episode, and we will really hone in on what I think that this team will do, what their mindset is, because I do think there's certain things that they do have to consider when making some of these decisions, etc. And so we'll go through each position group, some more thorough than others, but at the end of the day, we'll go through and touch every position group basically on the offensive side of the football. Some positions, as you know, this team needs more of than others, so you'll see more of a wider net cast at certain positions. And it also will speak to the depth and the quality of the players available at said positions as we go through these lists. So let's start with the quarterback position. I've got 8 quarterbacks that I believe are worth having a discussion about. So I put these 8 quarterbacks on the list. Now, of those 8, I've highlighted 3 as guys that I think would actually make a difference here and should be on the Commanders' radar. 2 of them in particular, if Marcus Mariota isn't able to be brought back and some sort of deal reached. The other 5, they're in the mix. Again, you could do a lot worse than them. Some, more upside than others. Some you're probably going off of what they once were, hoping that you can tap into a little bit of that here. Look, the bottom line is if you're starting your backup quarterback for any amount of time, more so than a 2 to 3 week stretch, you're in trouble anyway. If Jaden Daniels, as we saw last year, if Jaden Daniels isn't starting, we're in a lot of trouble anyway. Or as a wise woman always used to say, you're in some deep, deep doo-doo. So, quarterbacks. Let's start out with the obvious elephant in the room, Marcus Mariota. He's 32 and a half years old, roughly 32.5 years old. So by the time the next training camp rolls around, he'd be pushing 33. Nobody cares about the age of your backup quarterback, to be honest with you. Mariota can still move. He can still throw it. He can still do all the things we need him to do. He showed the ability to run the offense effectively. Now, again, it's going to be a different offense this year. But I think whatever the offense looks like, he can be able to adjust and adapt and fully, fulfill what we need out of our backup quarterback. So to me, Marcus Mariota is the no-brainer slam dunk choice to be back. But we'll see what happens. Somebody brought up Zach Wilson and Mitchell Trubisky as two options to replace Marcus, saying that Marcus, don't want to spend a lot of money on a Marcus Mariota. And I'm like, Zach Wilson made $2 million less than Marcus Mariota last year. Like, backup quarterbacks aren't going to cost you a ton unless you're going high-level backup quarterback. And Marcus is a high-level backup, but not to the point where he's a fringe starter, right? When you're paying a fringe starter, a guy that's going to be the bridge to your young quarterback, you're going to have to pay that guy some money, $10, $12 million. That's not what we're doing here, right? And so none of these guys on this list check that box necessarily. You're going to have to pay, the going rate for a quality backup quarterback. But Zach Wilson at 26.5 years of age, still very, very young, hasn't won a football game since 2023. Honestly speaking, I'm not a big Zach Wilson fan. I was when he was coming out of BYU. He is damaged goods. Not to say that he can't be salvaged, but is that what we're trying to do here? Is that what you're looking for in your backup quarterback? Because that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a known commodity that I can trust, because I have aspirations. I don't know about you, and I won't speak for where you are in your process as a fan. I have aspirations of this team competing for the NFC East Championship. This division is in flux. Everyone's got new coaches all over the place. No one's really got a ton of continuity. Everyone's kind of searching for an identity right now in this division. There is no dominant team per se, right? I think this thing is up for grabs. And if you're going to win the division, you shouldn't have to tap into your backup quarterback. But if you should, you want one that you can rely on. I can't rely on Zach Wilson, but he's a young option. Mitchell Trubisky, more of a reliable option. Buffalo would be stupid to let him out of their building, to be honest with you. He's 31.4 years of age. So he'll be pushing 32 years of age as you get towards the start of the season. Again, that's really irrelevant at this point. Age doesn't really concern me with a backup quarterback unless you're talking about a guy like Josh Johnson, who once upon a time used his legs quite a bit, but at the age of 40, not as dynamic as he once was. That's not the case. Mitchell Trubisky can still move. He's one of the guys that I highlighted, played really well behind Josh Allen in Buffalo when he has been given an opportunity. Not that Allen is out of the lineup very often, if at all, but in some of those blowout mop-up duties in the preseason, Trubisky's looked really good. And I have confidence that if you have to put Mitchell Trubisky in the game for a couple of weeks, he can get the job done. Hendon Hooker is an interesting guy. We even talked about Hendon Hooker about 2 years ago when we first got our assistant GM in here coming over from Detroit, Lance Newmark, because Hendon Hooker was the third-round pick and Lance Newmark was a part of that brain trust. Maybe Hendon Hooker could end up here. That never, came to fruition. Hooker never has been really given a chance. Obviously, Jared Goff is the man in Detroit. Never got on the field. Haven't really seen Hendon Hooker in the preseason. He's been, right? He's had his moments in the preseason, but he's still an intriguing guy. Still young, at 28 years of age, basically. Again, I'm not interested in trying to develop a young quarterback as my backup. I am interested in developing a young quarterback as the third option here, which I've talked about. Hendon Hooker is a guy that I think still needs development, and I'm not in that space when I'm thinking about my backup quarterback, right? So I'll pass on him, but he is an interesting guy nonetheless. And because of Lance Newmark being here, you should consider a guy like Hendon Hooker. Would I be interested in a Hendon Hooker to be your third quarterback? Maybe, maybe, depending on where he is and how he's viewed around the league. I see him as a third quarterback, but you should be able to find your own Hendon Hooker in the draft, whether that's undrafted, free agent, whatever the case may be. You would like to find, a better version of, I don't know why I'm blanking on the quarterback we have here. That's Jaden's ball boy. But he was undrafted. You guy you just brought in here, tried to develop. It didn't work. Go find a new one, right? Trey Lance, 25.8 years of age. He's interesting because I feel like he's gotten some good coaching in LA with the Chargers. And so Sam Hartman, thank you. Feel like he's starting to get it, is Trey Lance. Got to watch him this year in a game in which Justin Herbert got injured versus the Raiders, and he was solid. Again, he's still not a finished product by any stretch of the imagination. And again, he's a guy that I think still needs more seasoning, but I think he's a little bit further along in his process than a Hendon Hooker per se. And the upside is tremendous with a Trey Lance if you're willing to roll the dice. Similar skill set to that of Jaden. He would be interesting, but again, I'm not looking for a developmental backup. I'm looking for a proven commodity there. And then the developmental prospect or the developmental quarterback is your third stringer behind the backup quarterback. And you could even convince me that the third string quarterback should be a veteran that can come in and play right away if need be, and that you could have the developmental guy as a practice squad player, i.e. Sam Hartman. Again, I'm open to all of that. Lance is not the backup for me for what I'm looking for, but he is an intriguing option if you aren't able to re-sign Marcus Mariota. Kyle Allen, our old friend from the 2020 season, the 2021 season. Do you know that Kyle Allen has yet to turn 30 years of age? I am absolutely shocked by this development. He's 29.9 years of age. That's hard for me to fathom. It feels like he's been in the league forever. As a matter of fact, I swear to you, he was in the league back in like 2015 with Ronald Rivera in Carolina. It might not have been that far back. There's no way he's been in the league 10 years and he's not 30 years old. So I got to imagine his first season was probably something like 2017 or something like that. But man, it feels like Kyle Allen's been in the league forever. But he's only 29. Who would have thought? He's interesting only because he's got experience. I know what he is. You know what he is. You could do a hell of a lot worse than Kyle Allen as your backup. But if he's in the game, you're in trouble more likely than not. Unlike this next guy, and to me, if you're not going to bring back Marcus Mariota, this should be the first guy that you target if you're the Commanders. Now, again, he's in a good spot right now, and sometimes you have to find out that the grass isn't greener on the other side. I think he found that out. If the Ravens are smart, they'll make sure that they keep him as the backup in Baltimore because Lamar Jackson, just came off of an injury-riddled season, although he's been healthy here of late. Last year was not the healthiest Lamar Jackson season, and you see the value of a Tyler Huntley. They let him walk. He went to Miami. It didn't work. They brought him back, and he basically put the Ravens in a position to make the postseason. And if Tyler Loop doesn't miss a kick on the final week of the season, the Ravens are in the postseason, and the Steelers are on outside looking in. And Huntley would have been a huge part of the reason why. For me, if you can't bring back Marcus Mariota, Tyler Huntley is the guy that I would go after. He's 28 years old. That's the perfect age to, have a guy that could be here for multiple years. Again, a similar skill set to that of Jaden. He can run an effective NFL offense. He can make enough plays to put you in a position to win. And I liken him a lot to Marcus Mariota without the dangerous turnovers. But that's a part of the Marcus Mariota package, if you will. You got to take the dangerous, turnover-worthy plays or just the turnover itself. But Mariota does so much good that it outweighs the bad. But you got to know that just when you get comfortable, just when you thought it was safe, Mariota. And remember, before last year, if you go back to 2024, Mariota didn't turn it over, right? He took care of the football. Last year, he went back to being the Marcus Mariota that we've come to know and love over the years. But I still trust Marcus. You give him, the football, say, hey, go win us this game. Jaden's going to be out for 2 weeks. Keep the ship afloat. I know Marcus can do it, and I know Tyler Huntley can do it as well. Same with Mitchell Trubisky. Those are the three guys that I would consider for the backup spot here in Washington. Mariota is the guy that I have identified. And at every position, I've identified one guy that is the most likely to end up as a Commander this offseason in free agency at that particular position. Marcus Mariota obviously is it at the quarterback position. Jeff Driscoll is the final name on this list. They kind of showed how they felt about Jeff Driscoll last year, how they handled him by not just simply bringing him back. He wasn't here at all in any capacity. And then, when they got to their dire straits after having gone through multiple quarterbacks, they finally picked up the phone and called Jeff Driscoll out of necessity at the end of the season. So that tells you that they don't love Jeff Driscoll for whatever reason. At 32 years of age, 32.8 years of age to be exact, I find it hard to believe that Jeff Driscoll will be back here in Washington this year. But again, we will see. So those are the 8 quarterbacks to mention as free agent options for the Commanders. Mariota has to be priority number one there. And if you're the Commanders, you shouldn't wait until free agency. You should get it done prior to free agency. Don't even allow Marcus to test the market. Again, the only way I see Mariota leaving is if someone gave him an opportunity to start. Who's giving Marcus Mariota the opportunity to start? Just don't see anybody doing that. So I expect Marcus Mariota to be back here in Washington. And I feel like they ought to bring in a young developmental quarterback this year. I feel like that should be high on the list of things to do at the quarterback position as well. Sam Hartman, as close of a relationship as he has with Jaden and how good he is for the locker room and that quarterback's room in particular, we've seen enough of that movie. Last year was just awful. Okay. You can't play any worse than the combination of him and Josh Johnson in the preseason. And while Johnson played better during the regular season, I don't want either one of them here this year. And nor should either of them be here. But Hartman may get a pass. I think it's time for them to find a developmental guy to take Sam Hartman's spot. But we'll see what they decide to do. Running back. Let's move on to the running back position. And for me, running back and tight end are two of the richest positions on the offensive side of the football. These are two of the richest positions in free agency, you could argue, overall. And you'd be hard-pressed to find this many good running backs available. Again, I think 2 or was it 3 years ago when Saquon made the jump from the Giants to the Eagles and DeAndre Swift went to the Bears and Josh Jacobs went to the Packers and Derrick Henry went to the Ravens. There was that one offseason where there were a ton of really good veteran running backs available. Tony Pollard went to the Titans from Dallas. This is comparable to that. You could argue this is even better than that because of the youth associated with these running backs. Those guys that I just mentioned were a little bit older, especially Derrick Henry. But this is a really good crop of running backs available. Same could be said for the tight end position, I believe. I think running backs better, deeper overall. What's going to be interesting is how many of these guys make it to free agency. I believe just about all of them will. Maybe sans for Breece Hall. I really think the Jets are extremely interested in making sure he remains a Jet. Everybody else feels like fair game. Everybody else feels like they'll be available. And again, there's always the allure of going back to the place where it all started. For a guy like Tyler Algier, shouldn't cost the Falcons a ton of money, but they've got a new general manager. Anytime you get a new GM, all bets are off. Got to assume that everybody is fair game until otherwise notified. But let's talk about the running back position. I've got 10 running backs that I think are very intriguing that I've listed. Of those 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them are guys that I've highlighted that I am very fascinated with and would love the Commanders to sign here. And so we'll go through that list quickly, but here are some honorable mention names that aren't on the list for various reasons that we don't need to get into, but they are notable names is what we'll call them. Javonte Williams, Rico Dowdle, Isaiah Pacheco, and Brian Robinson Jr. are all notable names, but I feel pretty confident that none of those guys will end up here. So no need in even wasting time discussing those guys. All right. So we start with Breece Hall. He's the guy that I think is going to set the market this year for the running back position. I think he's going to be the guy that gets the most money of any of these free agent running backs, even though Kenneth Walker III just made things interesting with his run in the postseason and capping it off with an exclamation point of Super Bowl MVP. Still think Breece Hall is the main attraction of this group. And at 24 years of age, he's the youngest, second youngest. But of all of the premier backs, he is the youngest at 24.7 years of age. I mean, it doesn't get any younger than that. It doesn't get any more prime of your career than that. All signs point to Breece Hall having a ton of tread left on the tires. Yes, he had one major injury at the NFL level, but I can't think of anybody that would turn down an opportunity to bring Breece Hall to Washington. I just don't see it happening. I don't see our general manager, Adam Peters, investing that much money into the running back position. That's not to say that he won't invest some money. I just don't think he's going to invest that kind of money. Again, Breece Hall, I don't think he's going to reset the running back market, but he's going to be the one that sets the market for this crop of running backs in free agency. And that number is going to be significantly higher than what I think our general manager, Adam Peters, is looking to spend. That said, Breece Hall, clearly a guy that Commanders fans and myself included are interested in. Kenneth Walker III, we've talked about him ad nauseum, 25.2 years of age, so extremely young. You love the guys that don't go in the first round, that teams don't have the extra year of service that they can milk out of these players. 4 years, you get out, you get to free agency, you're still super young, tons of tread left on the tire. And then you also got to love a guy like Kenneth Walker, who here over the last couple of years has been platooning with Zach Charbonnet. So he's got plenty of tread on those tires as well. And so he's super intriguing. Another guy that I would love to see here in Washington. Doesn't sound like the Seahawks are interested in franchise tagging him. We talked about that. I think it was either last show or the show before that. But again, he's going to cost a lot. And I just don't think Adam Peters is going to be interested in spending that kind of money. Rachaad White, 27.1 years of age. So a little bit older than those two guys we just mentioned, but still plenty of juice left, still good prime football left in him. And much like I mentioned with Kenneth Walker, Rachaad White platooned each of the last 2 years, and specifically each of the last 2 years, he wasn't getting the bulk of the carries, right? He was relegated to basically backup, mop-up duty in Tampa Bay behind Bucky Irvin. So when we talk Rachaad White, we're talking about a guy that is extremely fresh over the last 2 years. Was relegated to basically a third down back in Tampa Bay. So he feels like a guy that is ripe for the picking here in free agency. And I've highlighted him as the guy that I see most likely to end up a Commander, Rachaad White. Because I think you can pair him with Bill if you wanted to bring in or bring back Chris Rodriguez, you could do that. You know, if you wanted to bring back Jeremy McNichols, you could do that. You'd have your stable of 4 backs. You don't spend a ton of money, but you have a good 1-2 punch of White and Bill, and then you just move forward with that. Right? I don't expect them to go out there and look for a home run, right? I don't think that Adam Peters is looking to spend home run money at running back. He's looking for a single, and if it's hitting the right part of the ballpark, he might stretch it head first, slide into second base for a double. But I don't look at this running back group as one that Adam Peters is prepared to spend home run money on. So Rachaad White is a good consolation, and I think that's the guy that ends up here in Washington. Travis Etienne, 27 years old. He's another guy that I think makes a ton of sense here in Washington, especially for the type of offense that they're going to try to run. Again, I think he might be a bit more pricey. We'll see. All it takes is one team to decide that Travis Etienne is worth fill in the blank amount of dollars, right? Etienne is a guy that I think you want a guy that is going to complement Bill in a way that allows Bill to be put in one position and the other guy to be put in another position. Etienne feels like a better version of Bill, right? A more developed, refined version of Bill. But you don't want duplicates. And that's what it feels like those two are. They're similar backs. So Etienne, while very intriguing, and I would love him to be in Washington, I just don't think that's the direction that they go, right? But here's a name that I think you should consider. And I've highlighted all 5 of the first 5 guys that I've spoken about. The 4 already and this next guy. Kenneth Gainwell, 26.9 years of age. So he'll be 27 here in the next few months. He is interesting because now, keep in mind, we're making a switch coordinator-wise, and because of that, it may change what they value out of the running back position. Cliff clearly valued a pass-catching running back that understood the responsibilities of a pass-catching running back when to stay in and block, when to get out in the route, how to run routes. He really talked about that, hammered it home with Bill. Bill wasn't good enough in pass pro. Bill wasn't good enough without the ball. He wasn't running proper routes, this, that, and the third. He was very nitpicky when it came to Bill. Loved Austin Eckler, though. Again, Cliff Kingsbury is no longer here. So if we are to assume that they're going in a different direction at the running back position, then a Kenneth Gainwell doesn't make as much sense. But if we still are to be of the mindset that being able to catch the football, being a quality third down back, and having return value, if you're moving on from Deebo Samuel, right, and you don't really have another viable return man option, Kenneth Gainwell fills that Austin Eckler role to a T. Eckler, remember, was an all-pro just 2 years ago here in Washington as a return man. The concussions really forced him out off that duty, right? Gainwell is a guy that can return kickoffs. He can catch it out of the backfield. He can pass protect. He was the Steelers' third down back. He caught a bunch of footballs last year from Aaron Rodgers, and he was really good with the Eagles the year they won the Super Bowl. Kenneth Gainwell would be an upgrade over Austin Eckler if the Commanders wanted to go that direction. He's a guy that I think you should keep an eye on if they were to add two backs. I don't think you just add Kenneth Gainwell with Bill, bring back C-Rod and Jeremy McNichols and call it a day and say that's your running back room. I don't think anybody would be overly enthused by that. But if you were to go get a Tyler Algier, who we're going to talk about here in a second, add in a Kenneth Gainwell to go with Bill, now that's a very formidable backfield. You can do a lot of things with that backfield. If you were to bring in a Rachaad White and a Kenneth Gainwell, again, you could do a lot, but feel like Rachaad White can catch the football out of the backfield. So you would kind of be doubling down on the pass catching ability there, whereas Algier is more of a hammer, right? He would take the place of a Chris Rodriguez, kind of upgrade you there. And then you'd let Gainwell take over the third down pass catching responsibilities, also return kickoffs, something that we don't have right now alongside of Luke McCaffrey. So Gainwell is one that I don't think you should count out here in Washington. Jeremy McNichols, I have to do it. J-Mac is a favorite. This is the box I'm putting J-Mac in this year. I'm putting J-Mac in the Olamide Zaccheaus 2025 box. A guy that I think we just all assumed was going to be back here. And they just looked at Olamide Zaccheaus and said, we can do better. We can do better. So they just let him walk. Jeremy McNichols, I know they love him on special teams. He's one of those guys. He don't have to get ready because he stays ready. All of that is cool. We need better than Jeremy McNichols. Okay? If you made me choose between Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez, give me Chris Rodriguez Jr. We don't need both of them on the roster. One of them needs to pack their things and go. And if you're making me choose between the two, give me the younger guy that has more upside as a runner. We watched Chris Rodriguez get active last year when he got opportunities. Give me that guy over Jeremy McNichols. And yep, he had the one run against the Raiders. Good for Jeremy McNichols. He had some excellent catches over the last 2 years, especially on third downs. The one on fourth down versus the Falcons in 2024 was huge. Had a big catch on a third down in the red zone against the Chargers in week 5 this season. He's done some really good things as Jeremy McNichols. Had some big catch and runs for us over the last 2 years. Also had the big fumble in the NFC Championship game. A lot of fans won't let that go. It's fine. I've moved on from that. I'm just ready to move on from Jeremy McNichols. Let's see if Dan Quinn and company are ready to do the same. I'm going to put him in that Olamide Zaccheaus box from last year of a guy that we just assume is going to be back. They love him. But they look at him and they realize we can do better. When you know better, do better. Tyler Algier, 25.8 years of age. Perfect range for a guy that was splitting time at the running back position. But as we know, Bijan Robinson was the man in Atlanta. Tyler Algier was the janitor. He cleaned up a lot of the messes that Bijan made. And big red zone touchdown guy. Physical in between the tackles, bruiser. Like I said, a better version of Chris Rodriguez. If you sign Algier, then you probably don't need C-Rod. You probably don't need C-Rod. But if you go in a different direction and you don't have a body type like a C-Rod, then I think C-Rod should be back here, right? So Algier is interesting. Again, Atlanta would be foolish to let him walk, but somebody might offer him the type of money Atlanta isn't willing to give him, right? That's very plausible. I don't think it's going to cost a ton to get Tyler Algier to sign on the dotted line. But again, we will see. He's perfect for this outside zone that we're going to run, this stretch, this zone run blocking scheme that we're going to employ this year. Or deploy this year. He's going to be perfect for it. He's a perfect press, stick your foot in the ground, get up the field type of running back. So love to see the Commanders, potentially add a guy like Tyler Algier. Jaleel McLaughlin. So the final three guys that I'm going to talk about here at the running back position are all restricted free agents, meaning that the teams that they're currently with have the right of first refusal. So you are not in control of these situations. The teams that they're currently on hold the cards here and can determine whether or not these guys are viable options by simply tendering these players, right? Now, if these teams do not tender these players, they become unrestricted free agents, and then all bets are off. They can sign wherever they like, and there is no penalty that you have to pay if you want him. Jaleel McLaughlin is a guy that is 25.4 years of age, has some speed, sort of a change of pace back in Denver. I don't love him. I don't hate him. And if they were to add him, I wouldn't be mad, right? But doesn't feel like a guy that's going to end up here. Doesn't feel like a guy that's long for Washington. But it is a name worth mentioning. I think Denver has a ton of backs, and I think he's going to have to find work elsewhere. So I don't think they're going to tender him. Here's a guy that I wouldn't be shocked if he did get tendered. Keaton Mitchell of the Baltimore Ravens, 24.1 years of age, the youngest player here among the 10 running backs I have listed. 24 years young at the running back position and a free agent is crazy. However, he is a restricted free agent. Again, if I'm the Ravens, I'm probably going to tender him. He offers you that dynamic speed that very few running backs in the league have. He's still not back to where he was prior to the injury. I think he gets back there this year, though, and I saw glimpses of it in 2025. They still have Justice Hill, so they may decide, we can move on from Keaton Mitchell. I just think they really, I know Harbaugh really loved Keaton Mitchell, so it wouldn't shock me if Keaton Mitchell ended up with the Giants if he were to shake free from Baltimore. But anytime you got that type of speed, I'm interested. So Keaton Mitchell is a guy that I definitely have an eye on. And then C-Rod is a restricted free agent, 25.3 years of age. So he's still very young as Chris Rodriguez Jr. We have the right of first refusal. I envision Chris Rodriguez being back here. Again, the odd man out should be Jeremy McNichols. You go out, you get a Rashad White, you bring back C-Rod, add with Bill already in the mix. And then if you want to bring in an undrafted as a fourth running back to compete along with another veteran, low-level veteran, knock yourself out. Hell, you could even bring back Jeremy McNichols to compete in that group. And if McNichols outlasts all of those guys to be the fourth running back on this roster and you want to keep four, Cool. You go 3 active on game days. Excellent. Whatever the case may be, we'll see how they decide to play it. But a running back room of Rachaad White, Chris Rodriguez Jr., and Bill would be solid. It's not the best you could do, right? You could obviously go out here, add a Breece Hall, add a Kenneth Walker III, or even a Travis Etienne, a Tyler Algier to really strengthen this room. Again, I don't see Adam Peters signing multiple running backs in free agency. I just don't. So you pick one. I think you pick one that's really good, that you're not going to have to break the bank on, but you still feel like there's enough upside to make it worth your while. And that guy is Rachaad White. That's the guy that I have pegged as the player most likely to end up a Commander at the running back position. Kenneth Gainwell is the one that I say you should look out for if they still value the running back position in terms of pass catching ability and the dual ability to be able to field kickoffs to give you another guy back there. Do not sleep on Kenneth Gainwell here in Washington. So those are the running backs. Rachaad White, that's the name you should keep in your mind. Kenneth Gainwell is a guy that I think is one you shouldn't count out, along with Tyler Algier. He feels like a guy that DQ would go to bat for. He feels like a guy that Adam Peters would covet. Those are the 3. And then, of course, I think C-Rod is back in the mix. Do not count out Jeremy McNichols. Wide receiver. I've got 16 names that I've listed. Now, of the 16, and at the running back position, I highlighted 7 guys. The 7 were Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker III, Rachaad White, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Gainwell, Tyler Algier, and Keaton Mitchell. Those were the 7, and Rachaad White is the one guy that I think the Commanders sign. Wide receiver, 16 names, okay? Of the 16, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys highlighted of the 16. Here are some notable names that will not end up here in Washington, but just throwing them out there as guys that are technically free agents, but some will not make it to free agency. Others won't consider Washington, and I don't think we will be considering them either. So the feeling will be mutual and reciprocal. George Pickens, we've talked about him. He's going to end up back in Dallas on the franchise tag. He may even be traded, but it won't be to Washington. Rashid Shaheed won the Super Bowl with the Seahawks. They want him back, spent a pick on him. Like I always tell you, when you trade for a guy at the trade deadline, it usually isn't a rental. You usually want that guy long-term. I see Rashid Shaheed being back in Seattle. Mike Evans, if he actually is leaving Tampa Bay, which it feels like he might actually be leaving Tampa Bay, Buffalo feels like where he's longed to be. He's going to go somewhere where he has a chance to win a Super Bowl, and he should. That's not here in Washington. Keenan Allen, another aging veteran. Keenan Allen would have made a lot of sense last year, or even the year before that, when he actually left the Chargers and went to Chicago. He would have made sense then. After last year, 2024 rather, almost making it to the Super Bowl, you needed a veteran. He would have made sense then. He went back to LA. He doesn't make sense now at over 33 years of age. Brandon Cooks, a guy that just continues to float around. He was in Buffalo this year after starting out the season in New Orleans. Really good receiver, highly productive, but not long for Washington. And your favorite guy, Jahan Dotson, won himself a Super Bowl and is now a free agent wide receiver. Obviously, we know this group is not interested. So let's get to the receivers, shall we? Start off with Jawan Jennings, former 49er wide receiver, 28.6 years of age, so he's a little bit older. He's a tough guy, physically imposing, a 6'3" receiver that plays like he's 6'6", uses his body extremely well, strong hands, showed the ability to even be able to throw the football in the wild card weekend win over the Eagles with the touchdown toss to Christian McCaffrey. He's a very versatile receiver in terms of the red zone. There's a lot to like. He blocks. He does the dirty work. I just don't like the price tag that may be associated with him. For his age and for what he does, just feel like he's going to command some real money in a very soft wide receiver market. His value may be slightly inflated, so much so that I think he's priced out of the Commanders market. Not that we don't have it, but just because you got it don't mean you have to spend it, especially if you're spending it on something. I don't mind spending as long as I feel good about my purchase. I don't know if I can feel really good about purchasing a Jawan Jennings at almost 29 years old for $20 million a year, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's a good use of our money, their money, right? So Jennings is definitely in the mix, however, especially if the price is right. And also, you have to take into consideration Adam Peters' relationship with him, if one exists, but him just being in San Francisco, understanding who Jennings is, type of player he is, what his mindset is, and what he brings to a locker room. Those things all make him a viable candidate here in Washington. Alec Pierce, we've talked about him. There's no way he ends up in Washington, if you ask me. 25.8 years of age, going into the prime of his career. I talked about this with you guys yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. There's a chance he ends up back in Indy, which a week or two ago didn't feel like that was realistic. But with Michael Pittman Jr.'s contractual situation and the likelihood that the Colts look to get from under his deal to free up some more space, moving on from a veteran receiver, it may open the door for Alec Pierce to be back in Indianapolis. And if that happens, this wide receiver market goes crashing down because you're going to have a lot of teams like the Titans, like the Raiders, with all this money to spend who need a big-time receiver and nowhere to spend it. So then you start going to the Jawan Jennings and the Wan'Dale Robinsons and the Tyreek Hills of the world and some of these guys that are bigger names, and you're going to throw money at them, and it's going to push up the market. So again, Alec Pierce being a part of this free agent market is huge. If he's not a part of this, it hurts this wide receiver market because then a guy like Jawan Jennings, his price goes up. But if Alec Pierce is gone, that means Michael Pittman Jr. is now on this list. And again, not that he is on the same level of Alec Pierce in terms of intrigue, but he would be a guy that some of these teams that need a receiver would covet, including us. He would be on the list of guys that you would think the Commanders would be looking to potentially add. But Pierce right now feels like a Titan, feels like a Raider, does not feel like a Commander, right? Wan'Dale Robinson is a guy that I would absolutely love to add to this team. That is a guy that wins at the line of scrimmage, a guy that gets open. He's a high volume catch receiver in this league. He's only 25 years of age. I love Wan'Dale Robinson. He feels long for Tennessee. However, they've got a bunch of money. They've got to continue to add weapons for Cam Ward. And oh, by the way, their offensive coordinator in Tennessee is Brian Daboll. So you go figure. Wan'Dale Robinson, though, don't know what his price range is going to be, but I'll be keeping tabs on it. As long as he's no longer a Giant and he's out of this damn division, fine by me. Because Wan'Dale Robinson, for the vast majority of his time here, was a Commander killer. All right, Mikey Samer still having nightmares about trying to cover Wan'Dale Robinson. All right. We'll see where he ends up. All three of those guys were highlighted. Deebo Samuel is not highlighted. At 30.1 years of age, it feels like he is on his way out of Washington. He came here and he served his purpose. It didn't materialize into what it was supposed to because of the injuries around him, right? Terry, Jaden. He was supposed to be a complementary piece, not the star main attraction. That was through no fault of his own. He was excellent on kickoffs when he was allowed to do it. He did the underneath, thing. He showed the ability to be a number one when he had to step up. The Chargers game, the Bears, or not the Bears game, the Falcons game. He was everything that the Giants game in week 1. He was everything that he was supposed to be, especially early, but it wasn't sustainable and it wasn't supposed to be his role. But I think his talents will be best utilized somewhere else. So I'm ready to move on from Deebo. That experiment wasn't terrible, but again, I think we can move on and we can do better, right? Tyreek Hill is a name that I think people get excited about. 31.9 years of age. He'll be 32, well into his age 32 year next season, coming off of a major, nasty injury to his knee. I'm good. He's not highlighted. I'm good on Tyreek Hill. And, oh, by the way, the likelihood is he doesn't want to play here. He wants to go somewhere. He's chasing a Super Bowl ring, too. So a place like Buffalo would make a ton of sense for a Tyreek Hill, right? I think they're more likely to go after a Mike Evans, but a Buffalo makes a ton of sense. Baltimore makes a ton of sense for Tyreek Hill. Somewhere where a team feels like they're close to winning a Super Bowl and they just need a piece or two to get pushed over the top. Tyreek Hill would make a ton of sense in locations like that, not here in Washington. Kansas City, somebody in the comment section said he's going back to Kansas City. I saw the defensive tackle, Jones, trying to convince him to come back, recruiting him, so to speak, to come back to Kansas City. It would make a ton of sense if he ended up where it all started. Same thing I saw with Deebo. George Kittle was trying to convince Deebo to come back to San Francisco. That's what happens with these players, right? They want to get the band back together. See if that happens with Tyreek Hill. Here's a name that is highlighted. Romeo Doubs, 25.8 years of age. This is a guy that I'm torn on. I'm split. He came into the league with drop issues. I think he's resolved those for the most part. He's got, his hands have really shored up over the last year and a half or so. Good age at 25.8. He'll be 26 years old at the start of next season. So nothing to complain about there. He's going into the prime of his career. But if you looked at the thumbnail and if you watch football, then he's one of these guardian cap guys. And I'm all about protecting the investment. Your head is your biggest investment as a player. You can't play on Sundays if you've got a concussion or you've got something going on with your noggin, right? So the easiest way to cut your earnings short is to have something going on up here. I'm just always nervous with guardian cap guys. And he's had quite a few concussions throughout his career. Same with a Chris Olave, right? Like, if I could remove the concerns about him sustaining another concussion, sign me up for Romeo Doubs. He's a hooper, man. He's an interesting guy to keep an eye on. I wonder what his market is going to be because he's got fringe number one wide receiver talent. Fringe number one. I don't know if he's a true one in this league, But we don't need a 1 right now. If you're going in free agency, we don't need a 1. We just need a complement to our number 1. And I know there's a sector of the fan base is like, yeah, we should be trying to get a receiver better than Terry. Yeah, we should. That's what the draft is for. That's what the draft is for. We're not looking to go out here and spend money on a receiver and have to pay him more than we're already paying Terry. That was the issue last year. We didn't want to pay Terry the money that he thought he deserved. Both parties were playing hardball there. So Dubs is interesting. I'll say that. Romeo Dubs is very, very interesting. Green Bay would be foolish because I'm not sure they have a number 1. Yeah, they drafted Matthew Golden. Took him 9 years to get his first touchdown. I don't know, man. They got a bunch of receivers. They're probably going to let him walk, is my guess. They got a ton of receivers in Green Bay. He'll be interesting. Quietly, he will probably be a very sought after commodity at the receiver position. Here's a name that I don't think a lot of fans are interested in thinking about. Tyquan Thornton. I have him highlighted. At just 25.5 years of age, Tyquan Thornton is very intriguing. If you've been one of those Marquez, Valdez, Scantling, let's go get him type of guys just off of pure speed and ability, then you should be all over Tyquan Thornton's ability to stretch the football field vertically. I've watched this guy every week for the Chiefs get behind the defense and Mahomes either under or overthrow this guy. But he's 4 yards open. Go watch the Eagles game. He was cooking the Eagles secondary. He was behind them late in that game 3 times and Mahomes missed him just about every single time. And there are countless examples of him getting behind NFL defenses. The one thing he could do coming out of college that the Patriots drafted him in the 2nd round to do out of Baylor was run, and he can do it. We keep talking about we need speed. There aren't many receivers in the league with this type of speed that Tyquan Thornton brings to the table. If you want speed, we keep talking about bring back De'Ami Brown, bring back. How about go get Tyquan Thornton instead? You want speed? There it is. In its purest, rawest form, Tyquan Thornton at like 6'2", 6'3" to boot. He tracks it pretty well, too. I was impressed with him last year in Kansas City. If you are and he shouldn't cost you a bunch. He shouldn't cost you a lot. This, to me, he is coupled with someone else, whether it's a draft pick or it's one of these other free agents. You get another guy on this list, you add Tyquan Thornton, and you go, all right, now we got a little something. Or you get a guy in the draft, you add Tyquan Thornton to Terry, to Luke, to Jalen Lane. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously. Treylon Burks feels like a guy that they're going to bring back. You throw all of that in a pot and you say, okay, I think we got some shit here. To me, this is not a main attraction signing. This is one of those other signings. Quiet signings. This isn't, you don't make a beeline in free agency for Tyquan Thornton. You go get your high-priced item first, and then when everybody else is still perusing through the wide receiver shelves, looking at Wan'Dale Robinson and Romeo Dubs, or a guy like Debo who you're not interested in re-signing, that's when you quietly go and get Tyquan Thornton. De'Ami Brown. I just brought up Tyquan Thornton, an old friend who I just talked about earlier with a guy like Tyler Huntley. you find out that the grass isn't greener on the other side. He went to Jacksonville, thought he was going to get a chance to shine, found out very quickly that he's a Jag, and not in terms of being a Jaguar. He's just a Jag. And he had to find that out the hard way. And he probably was told he couldn't go back home. And you know when he might hear that? When he was back home. There's a real chance that they bring Dyami Brown back home on a very, very shrewd hometown discount. There's a chance. I'd much rather have Tyquan Thornton, if you ask me. Way faster than Dyami. If we just gonna let Jaden air the bitch out and just, hey, run straight in a straight line as fast, go get Tyquan Thornton instead. Again, Dyami Brown, not going to be a guy you make a beeline to go get. He's an afterthought signing. You go get all your stuff. Oh, there's Dyami. Sign him too. Same with Tyquan Thornton. Right? Marquise Hollywood Brown. Hollywood! 28.7 years of age. I've really soured on him over the last 2 years. Before his Kansas City Chiefs stint, I was extremely high on him coming off of what he did in Arizona. I thought he was going to kill it in Kansas City. And, you know, whether it was injuries, inconsistency, whatever the case may be, the Chiefs offense just wasn't right. But he didn't do anything there that made me go, yeah, this is why I thought you were a fringe number one. I don't really know what to make of him, but if you're in the business of buying low, his stock you can't get much lower than it is now for a guy that was a former first-round pick and was traded for a first-round pick. He might still have some good football left in him. Maybe a change of scenery would do him good, but I'm good on Marquise Hollywood Brown. I know that much. But he's a name. Christian Kirk was a guy that we were all over last year in terms of a potential target, knowing that his release was impending, right? Then the Houston Texans swooped in on the 25th hour, snatched him up, and we never got to see what him and Cliff's offense would look like here in Washington. Cliff is no longer here. Christian Kirk is a year older at 29.2 years of age. I don't know if the fascination still exists amongst Commanders fans. I have not necessarily soured. I just feel like I'm good on Christian Kirk at this point. But I can tell you that his playoff run, specifically the game that he turned in against the Pittsburgh Steelers, may have reinvigorated his market. We'll see. He showed well in the postseason, and I could see a team feeling really good about him. So this next one, this is the guy that I think, and you're not going to like this, by the way. I have circled this guy is the player most likely to become a Commander. Jalen Speedy Naylor, 26.9 years of age, so he'll be 27. This is probably going to piss some of you off. This is such an Adam Peters move, right? You want something big, priced, shiny, dynamic, and he goes out and gets Jalen Naylor. And you're like, what the F is a Jalen Naylor? So here's why I think he's a guy most likely to end up here in Washington. Now, again, got to see how this whole Brandon Ayuk situation kind of unfolds, if you will, because he's getting released from the 49ers. I don't think anybody's going to trade for him. He's going to be released. He's going to be available. And we'll see if Washington has any interest in signing him. Because if they sign a Brandon Ayuk, again, we don't know what this version of Brandon Ayuk looks like. Hasn't played football in almost 2 years. So you've got to pump the brakes on what you can expect from him. But assuming that he's anything close to what he was prior to the injury, then all of a sudden your wide receiver picture looks vastly different. You sign a Brandon Ayuk, you bring back Treylon Burks, you don't need to do anything else at receiver, theoretically speaking, right? You don't need to do anything else at receiver, right? Or at least I don't think they're going to do anything else at receiver. But if they don't, I think Jalen Naylor, as much as this is going to piss you off, I think he's the guy. Hear me out. Here's why I say this. This is, and it's not quite the same. As a matter of fact, let me look up his numbers. But I'll tell you what I liken him to here in a second. Let me look his numbers up first before I say something crazy. Yeah. So I feel like, and let me look something else up first. Let me see what year. I feel like he had that pretty. I feel like the guy that I'm comping him to here had his breakout pretty early on. Like, and again, that the guy that I'm comping him to played with a Hall of Fame quarterback right out of the gates. So a little bit different, but let's see. I mean, it's not the same, but I feel good about what I'm about to say. I thought he had already had a 1,000-yard season, but he was damn close the year before he got to Washington. But I digress. I liken Jalen Naylor. I liken him to Pierre Garçon in terms of his trajectory, where he is in his NFL career. When we got Pierre, he had yet to fully blossom. He was ready to turn into a dynamic receiver. He was playing with Peyton Manning, though, so you knew he was good. How good? We didn't know until he got here. Jalen Naylor is a guy that's been cooking in that Minnesota Vikings offense, learning from Justin Jefferson, getting better year after year. He's really talented. If you watch the Vikings towards the end of last year, whether it was early in the season when the suspension happened to their number 2 receiver, or you just saw the level of comfort that J.J. McCarthy or whomever was at quarterback, Carson Wentz, had with Naylor. He was the guy. If you remember that Dallas game on Sunday Night Football, who was the guy the Cowboys couldn't stop? It wasn't Justin Jefferson. It was Jalen Speedy Naylor, okay, that they couldn't stop. And if you watch last year, he continues to develop. He looks really good. And here's the thing that I feel like is going to push this over the top. We just brought in Durante Jones, who's been in Minnesota for the last 3 years. Jalen Naylor has been in Minnesota for the last 3 years. If there's anybody that can tell Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, hey, this young kid is ascending, he's about to blow up, you might want to go and get him, it's Durante Jones. Now, I don't know if Durante Jones is going to vouch for him in that way, but I can tell you that he's learned. First of all, he can run. That's why they call him Speedy. Okay, so he can run. So he offers you that ability. He can track the football. He can make plays on the football. And to me, when you look at his trajectory and where he's heading, learning from Justin Jefferson every day, who is the best receiver in football, I think that Jalen Nailor is ready to come in here and be a legitimate number 2 wide receiver in an NFL offense. Now, again, we'll see what they decide to do. I would prefer him as a number 3 personally, right? Which is what he was in Minnesota behind Addison. And you could theoretically sign him and do a signing of Brandon Ayuk on a 1-year deal, but I don't see both of them happening. If they don't go the Ayuk route, I could see an instance where they really believe in Treylon Burks, former first-round pick, Jalen Speedy Nailor as option 2/3, right? I would go with 2 there. I would have Treylon Burks as your 3rd option, and then you let the rest of those young receivers kind of fill out the rest of the depth chart. I could see them going that route. It would piss a lot of fans off. I'm telling you, Jalen Nailor can play. He can hoop. And he's not going to cost you a ton. He's not going to cost you a ton. So, again, this is all with the expectation that Treylon Burks is going to be back here in Washington, right? This is with the expectation that Treylon Burks is going to be back in Washington. So you've got Terry, you've got Jalen Nailor, you got Treylon Burks, you've got I would still feel like you would have to add another, again, I would add some more speed, Tyquan Thornton, someone of that ilk to go along with Luke and Jalen Lane. And again, don't forget, and we often do this, but they got some young guys that they want to take a look at that were undrafted last year, that are still here, that are going to be back at camp this year, who may be prepared to step up now in year 2. Not saying, just saying. So we'll see. But Jalen Nailor is not going to cost you a ton of money. And he could be one of 2 guys that they add, right? They could add a Romeo Doubs and a Jalen Nailor. Who wouldn't love that? Right? Now you got a legitimate 3 wide receiver set, and you still could add Treylon Burks. Because I don't think any of us as fans are sold on Luke McCaffrey, the receiver, sold on Jalen Lane, the wide receiver. So while they'll continue to mention those guys when they talk about the receiver position, we're not viewing them. Luke McCaffrey right now, until otherwise notified, is a kickoff return man. Jalen Lane, until otherwise notified, is a punt returner. So those guys have to earn the right to be called receivers. They're specialists as of right now. So for me, you should be looking to add at least 2 new receivers to this room. Similar to the way I feel about the safety position. Now, they might feel totally different now that you got Durante Jones in here. He may be able to salvage some things at the safety position. That's just my perspective, having watched this team. You need to add at least 2 receivers. I'm not done yet. I just think Nailor is going to be the one that they look to add. And I think Durante Jones is going to have a very heavy influence on Jalen Nailor being brought in here. Jalen Tolbert, another Jalen. This is a guy at same exact age, 26.9 years of age. You should know him from Dallas. He's been in Dallas his entire career. He's kind of been phased out. They had the young kid out of like West Alabama. I forget his name. He stepped up this year, kind of took Jalen Tolbert's spot in Dallas. So Tolbert is expendable. I'm not interested. Jalen Tolbert feels like a Charger to me. It feels like he should go somewhere like that. I could see Jalen Nailor going to LA. He feels like a Charger too, right? We'll see what happens. Treylon Burks, 25.8 years of age. He feels like a lock to be back. I think they saw plenty in him, his mindset, former first round pedigree. I find it very hard to believe he's not back here in Washington. Don't forget, they signed Nick Nash. I know y'all ain't really feeling Nick Nash right now. It's Mr. Nasty time. It's going to be nasty time in the summertime. But Traylon Burks is going to be on this roster, if you ask me. Kendrick Bourne, 30 and a half years old. We wanted Kendrick Bourne like 6 months ago. That ship sailed. I'm good on Kendrick Bourne now. But again, that's a low-level signing. If they decided to do that, I wouldn't be pissed off about it. But I'm good on Kendrick Bourne at this point. That made a ton of sense back when we weren't sure about Noah Brown. But now we're good. Tutu Atwell. So here we are again. Tutu Atwell. We were here this time last year talking about Tutu Atwell. He decided to go back to the Rams. It didn't work. So now I think he's going to test free agency. We talk about a guy that can flat out fly. It's the equivalent of Tyquan Thornton, except 5 inches shorter, right? Tutu Atwell's like 5'8", 5'9", right? Tyquan Thornton's like 6'2", 6'3". But you're talking about two guys that can flat out fly. Tutu Atwell would, like, I was so big on Tutu last year because he kind of fit what Cliff wanted to do. A lot of at or behind the line of scrimmage throws, get the ball in guys' hands quickly, let them make little plays, similar to what they were trying to do with Debo, just a more explosive version of that. If you're looking for a guy that can stretch the football field vertically again, which we need, Tutu Atwell makes a ton of sense. That's another guy I have highlighted because he can run. And I said this the other day. I can't remember if it was yesterday's show, the day before that, or whenever. But I said, when's the last time we had a guy that you could just throw it to and he could make some shit shake and turn a 2-yard pass into a 62-yard touchdown? Again, I don't know. Curtis Samuel, maybe. And again, how many did he ever do that here in Washington? Did he ever take a short pass and turn it into a touchdown? I don't think he ever did that here. He had the capability of doing it, but he never did it. Like, we just don't have that. We haven't had that. We need that. Tutu Atwell could be that. So he's interesting. I have him highlighted. And then our old friend Olamide Zaccheaus at 28 and a half years old. Look, I don't expect them to revisit this, but he's a cheap option. And they may have said to themselves, we made a mistake. We should have kept Olamide here. And they may decide to right or wrong and bring him back. I highly doubt that, but I wouldn't rule it out. And seeing as if they have a couple extra dollars laying around and Olamide is still available, it ain't going to hurt you to bring him to camp. Olamide Zaccheaus, I think, played for like $1.2 million last year in Chicago, something like that. Like, they wanted to bring him back into the mix to compete in camp. I don't think anybody would question that, but he's not going to be a primary free agent target. So just a name that is familiar here, and he is someone that I wouldn't just discount and write off. So 16 receivers in total. I highlighted 9 of them, the 9 guys that I highlighted that I think are going to be in serious consideration here. Jawan Jennings, Alec Pierce, Wan'Dale Robinson, Romeo Doubs, Tyquan Thornton, De'Ami Brown, Jalen Naylor, Traylon Burks, and Tutu Atwell. Of those 9 guys, I expect the Commanders to sign at least one for sure. That guy would be Treylon Burks. Probably should have been the guy that I circled as the guy that's going to be here because he's absolutely going to be here. So, you know what? I change the guy that's absolutely going to be here. It's Treylon Burks. I think the next guy is Jalen Speedy Naylor. Keep a watchful eye on him. Similar to what I said about Kenneth Gainwell, keep a watchful eye on Jalen Naylor here in Washington. But there's some very intriguing names here. Romeo Doubs. Wandale, I would love to add Wandale Robinson here. Jaden has never really truly had a dynamic slot here in Washington, right? He had Olamide, he had Jamison Crowder. Neither of them are dynamic. They could get open. They knew how to sit down in the zone. You know, they were reliable for the most part, but he's never had a dynamic slot. Wandale Robinson would be a dynamic slot. I would love to see him have that. Would love to see him have that. All right. So we're now on to the tight end position. They are going to add a tight end in free agency. Which one? Anybody's guess. But I feel very confident that at every one of these positions, the Commanders are going to add a player, right? They're going to add a quarterback. It might just be adding Marcus Mariota back to, but that's still a guy that is technically not under contract. Running back. I think they're going to add a running back. I think it's going to be Rachaad White. Wide receiver. I think they're going to, well, we know they're adding at least Treylon Burks back to the mix. I think they're going to add another wide receiver. Could be a Jalen Naylor, could be a Tyquan Thornton, could be a De'Ami Brown, could be a Jawan Jennings, a Wandale Robinson, a Romeo Doubs. We'll see. A Tutu Atwell. But they're going to add a receiver to that mix. They're not just going to. We have 6 draft picks, folks. 6. Not 16, just 6. You can't do but so much in the draft. Hence, them being aggressive in free agency. When Ian Rappaport said he expects fireworks from the Commanders, he's talking about the fireworks that are constant and consistent. It ain't the big ones, right? It ain't the ones you go, pow, and you go, oh, wow. It's just, you're going to get 1 or 2. But for the most part, it's just going to be, he's going to keep peppering you. Bop, 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 bop. And they're going to be solid fireworks, not the cheap ones. Right? It's going to be solid fireworks. He's going to be active and aggressive. Maybe not to your liking, but it won't be the consistent barrage of 1-year deals of guys that don't move the needle. That's not what's going to happen this time around. Not initially, at least. You'll get to the point in free agency where everyone's doing that, right? Signing a bevy of 1-year contracts to veterans. As we hit the tight end position, I have 12 guys that I wrote down. It's a really robust tight end group. You should be able to walk away with something that makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. If you're serious, right? If you're serious, of course. If you're not serious, you'll let these guys go to other destinations and we'll try to parade Ben Sinnott around as a tight end 1, and it'll make us sick to our stomach. But there's enough stuff available in free agency that this shouldn't be an issue. We should be able to grab something and feel good about it. Before we get to the 12 names that I have listed, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. So half of these names highlighted, right? And here are some notable names that won't be in Washington. Travis Kelce, either he's in Kansas City or he's retiring, but he's a free agent nonetheless. Dallas Goedert, his time in Philadelphia is up. I want no parts of him here. Really good tight end. Let him go play somewhere else. It would be like doing the Zach Ertz thing all over again. I'm not interested in a 32-year-old tight end who's dealt with injuries his entire career, which is the reason why Philadelphia is moving on from him. I'm good. Thanks, but no thanks. Tyler Higbee is about to turn like 35. I don't know if he's that old, but he's old. And he can't move anymore. I'm good. Darren Waller is really interesting because he came out of retirement and he was a red zone dynamo for the Dolphins, like right out of the gate. Then injuries took effect, but he's not long for Washington. Yeah, but he can still play. He can still hoop. Anyway, tight end position, Kyle Pitts. I strongly believe he ultimately ends up back in Atlanta. But the reason why I didn't put him on the list of notable names is because we don't know what the hell the Falcons are going to do. They got a new general manager. And while it feels like said general manager is going to do the thing that he should do, which is franchise tag Kyle Pitts, he could easily say, no, I'm not doing that. My focus is figuring out what the quarterback situation is going to be. Pitts can go. We'll find another cheaper option on the free agent market, which there will be. That'll be somewhat comparable. Won't be Kyle Pitts, but a hell of a lot less money it'll cost you. That may be the thing they decide to do. Swap out Kyle Pitts for Chig Okonkwo, right? Either way, Pitts is 25.3 years of age, going into the prime of his career. He's already got a 1,000-yard season under his belt. Highly talented. You treat him like a receiver. You split him out. You create mismatches. Love to see him in this offense. It ain't happening. It ain't happening. But we can dream. Dream, dream, dream. David Njoku, 29.6 years of age. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I was really interested in David Njoku the first time he was available when he was in Cleveland. Now it's the second time, and he's about to be 30, and he's still a guy that finds himself oft injured. I'm good. I'm good on David Njoku. He can still play. He can still help somebody. He's still a tremendous athlete. I'm good. I'm good. Isaiah Likely, 25.8 years of age. This is the guy right here that I have circled as the player that I think the Commanders go aggressively after in free agency. They're going to have to make an aggressive pitch to him because, again, I could see an instance where his former head coach, now residing in New York with the Giants, tries to lure him to New York. They already have a tight end, in New York. Theo Johnson, who played really well for them last year, doesn't mean they can't add Isaiah Likely to that tight end room in New York. Our pitch to him is simple. You don't have to move very far, just down I-95 slightly. And more importantly, you don't have to fight with anybody to be the TE1 here, right? Like, we sign you and you go straight to the top of the food chain. You go to New York or somewhere else, that might not be the case. You come here, we already got a slot waiting on you. We got TE2, our permanent TE2 and John Bates. We got our TE3 and Ben Sinnott. You slide in as TE1, day one. Let's get after it. I'm going to be disappointed if we don't get Isaiah, like one of the guys that I have highlighted. I'm going to be disappointed. I'm going to be honest with you. This is the one position that if we don't come away with one of the guys that I've highlighted, I'm going to be disappointed because there's too much talent here. We've got plenty of money. There's no, and Jaden loves the tight end. We can't go into 2026 without a pass catching threat at the tight end position because Jaden is too reliant upon the tight end position. He needs that security blanket. You have to go get him a tight end and an athletic one. And there's no reason not to. Similar to what I said about Jalen Naylor, Isaiah Likely is ready to have a breakout season. He's ready. He's been learning from a really good tight end, probably a Hall of Fame tight end in Mark Andrews. He's been bubbling beneath the surface. He's ready. He's ready to turn into a legitimate TE1 in this league. He's ready. That's the guy we need to go after aggressively. Like the first person you sign in free agency aggressively. When March 9th hits, that tampering period, one of the first names that you should hear has agreed in principle to a deal is Isaiah Likely to Washington on a 3-year, $39 million deal. Make it happen. Make it happen. Chig Okonkwo, 26.4 years of age. Now, he's undersized, right? He reminds me a lot of Delaney Walker. Undersized, athletic as hell, but is a problem if you can just get it to him. A lot of y'all remember him because he went to the University of Maryland, and a lot of y'all were interested in him when he was coming out. Well, you get a second shot at him. Maybe the Titans bring him back, but again, being that they're doing a complete overhaul there, it'll be interesting to see what they do. They're going to probably be in the market for a tight end. And they got the money. The Titans got the money to go get an Isaiah Likely, right? Again, if Kyle Pitts isn't on the market, it hurts us. Just like if Alec Pierce isn't on the wide receiver market, it hurts a team like us. Because what it does is it forces the teams that have all this money to spend to go spend it elsewhere. And it's going to boost up the market and inflate it in a way that's going to hurt a team like Washington that, and the rest of the teams for that matter, who aren't looking to overspend, which is what you do in free agency. But that's how you get yourself into trouble. Chig is a guy that I highlighted. I would love to add him. Another guy that's an extremely gifted athlete. You got to come away with one of these tight ends, man. Cade Otton, 26.8 years of age, from Tampa Bay. Another guy that is capable of being a dynamic pass catcher. I highlighted him. Not as great of an athlete as the first three guys I highlighted in Pitts, Likely, and Okonkwo, but very effective. Otton is one of those dudes. He'd fit in Washington. Nondescript white dude at the tight end position. Doesn't wear any gloves. He looks like a basic tight end, but he's so much more than that. I'll actually be shocked if Tampa Bay doesn't bring him back. They don't have anybody on their roster like him. So feel like they should make him a priority in Tampa Bay. But if they don't, I'm interested. Tyler Conklin, 30 and a half years old, basically. We've joked about him. Rio has brought him up, joked about the Commanders signing Tyler Conklin. He's the new he's the new receiver. Well, he's a tight end, but the receiver we were talking about last year from the Titans that Rio kept saying we were going to sign. And I was like, no, we're not. Conklin is that guy for Rio this year that we're going to sign. He's a solid athlete. I got no issues with him. If they signed him, I wouldn't be pissed off. But I don't want Tyler Conklin here in Washington. You can do better. Pretty much, you can do better than him. Noah Fant is 28.2 years of age. spent his last season in Cincinnati. I don't know what it is about Noah Fant, but I just always expected him to be better. Former first-round pick out of Iowa, the famed Iowa Hawkeyes tight end program that produced guys like, George Kittle and man, it was a long list of those dudes. Going back a ways, CJ Fedorowicz, Kittle, Fant. There was one more guy. I feel like I'm missing somebody. I don't think he went to Iowa. I can't think of his name anyway. But it was they had a run. It was them, it was Stanford, it was Notre Dame. Those are the three programs that were producing tight ends at this crazy rate. TJ Hawkinson, there you go. That's the guy I was trying to think of. Thank you, Dell. TJ Hawkinson. And Fant was supposed to be the next one up. And I don't know what happened. He just never materialized. I saw flashes in Denver where he was drafted. He gets traded to Seattle in the Russell Wilson deal. It never turns into anything there. And he ends up in Cincinnati, and I'm like, oh, this is a great spot for him. And it just never happened. If it ain't happened with Joe Burrow, it didn't happen, everywhere. It's not gonna happen here. So I'm good on Noah Fant. But he's an athlete. Kylan Granson, 27.8 years of age. He was in Philadelphia last year, started out his career in Indianapolis. He's an athlete. An intriguing one, but, again, not one that I'm necessarily crazy about, but he's an athlete nonetheless. Stone Smart, 27.3 years of age. Went to ODU. That's his claim to fame. Former quarterback. Was supposed to turn into the next dynamic former, this position turned tight end. And it didn't happen with the Chargers. And it's probably not going to happen. Didn't have a great year last year with the Jets, but he's still talented. I just don't know if it's ever going to turn into what it was supposed to. Next guy I have highlighted, Greg Dulcich, 25.8 years of age, played with the Dolphins this past year and played well. Almost set career highs across the board. Just was short of catches, yards. Everything was right there, I think, from his rookie season. So he was really good. And remember all of the issues they had in Miami this year, quarterback position, offensively. And he was one of the lone bright spots, at the tight end position. I'm intrigued. That's a lower level signing for me. If you don't get Pitts, you don't get Likely, you don't get Okonkwo, right? Dulcich is like a fallback plan. Like, okay, we missed out on all the upper echelon free agent tight ends. Here's a lower level guy that still offers you athleticism and the ability to stretch the field vertically. Injuries have been his biggest issue. And I'm always nervous about that with players, especially if they're coming here. Sam Laporta was the guy that I was thinking about. And I was like, he didn't go to Iowa. I couldn't think of his name, so it didn't matter. But yes, Hawkinson and Fant came out the same year. And then Laporta followed up. And so, like I said, Iowa, Stanford, Notre Dame have been the tight end factories in the NFL. And Fant just hasn't lived up. The others have. Fant has not. Dulcich is a guy that I am intrigued by. So is the next guy. Now, there's some complications with this next guy, though. Jake Tonjes, 26.6 years of age, San Francisco 49er, which direct ties to Adam Peters. So he's been in the shadows of George Kittle, as we know. Kittle gets injured last year. Tonjes steps up, keeps the 49ers afloat at the tight end position, was a huge part of the reason why they were successful. Despite Kittle being out for the amount of time that he missed, Tonjes stepped up and was massive. And he's a restricted free agent. And I just can't see a way where San Francisco doesn't put a tender on him. So he feels unrealistic. I mention him because if by some strange, twist of fate, the 49ers are just like, we can find another Jake Tonjes, sign me up. But again, they're not going to do that. They see the value. First of all, George Kittle is like 800 years old, coming off of an injury-riddled season. They need a guy like Jake Tonjes backing him up. They control the situation because he's a restricted free agent. They can tender him. Put a second-round tender on him. Who's going to give you a second-round pick for Jake Tonjes? Nobody. Nobody. And that's what they're probably going to do. So I can't envision Jake Tonjes being a free agent, an unrestricted one. But I mention him because if the 49ers somehow drop the ball on this one, there'll be plenty of teams lined up ready to get into Jake Tonjes business. And we should be one of them. And then lastly, Tyree Jackson was here with us last year. He's 28.2 years of age. I got to assume that they're intrigued by him, if nothing else. They may bring him back. Similar to Stone Smart, former quarterback, turned tight end. You're hoping that there's something there. I think they're going to give Tyree Jackson one more spin around the block. He's going to get an invite to camp, and they're going to see if he can finally show something or if this is the end of the line for him. So I expect Tyree Jackson. He's restricted free agent as well. So the Commanders, they're not going to tender him. Okay, they're not putting a tender on him. But I do see them being interested in potentially bringing him back, a part of the 90-man roster. So of the 12 tight ends, I highlighted 6: Pitts, Likely, Okonkwo, Otten, Dulcich, Tonjes. Those are the 6 I've highlighted. Of the 6, the one that's most likely to be a Commander is Isaiah Likely. Again, I'm going to be very disappointed if we don't come away with one of the 6 guys I highlighted. And really it's 5 because, again, Tonjes I don't think is going to be a part of this group. Really, it's probably going to be narrowed down to 4 because Kyle Pitts I don't think is going to be a part of this group either, which is going to make it tougher on Washington because all of a sudden now a team like Tennessee, who's got all this money to spend, who would have probably thrown, backed up the Brinks truck for Kyle Pitts, all of a sudden now is turning their attention to the next guy on the list, which is Isaiah Likely. And so you just want options. And you hope a guy like Pitts, you hope a guy like Pierce, who we probably won't sign, but Tennessee will spend money on him. They'll be distracted on him, and it'll give you a chance to go get another guy. That's what you want. So we'll see. But I'll be really disappointed if they don't come away with a pass-catching tight end. In a league where you are rewarded for having mismatch nightmares at the tight end position, we haven't had that. Zach Ertz was really good in the red zone, in critical situations, down in distance, 3rd down, 4th down. But by no means was he an athletic mismatch. That part of his career had come and gone. He just was so savvy as a route runner, he could uncover and be available for Jaden. We need an athletic guy. I'm ready for Jaden to have receivers that can clearly win for him. We haven't really had that here. How many times are we going to talk about the Terry contested catch rate? That's because there's not a ton of separation. Some of that is by design because who else does the defense have to worry about? So they can play bracket coverage. They can play underneath and over the top. And so guys can stay glued to Terry. But the fact remains, if Terry's not separating, whoever is opposite of him isn't separating most of the time. We didn't have a tight end that could really separate. Ertz could, but again, not because of athleticism, more because of route running. Separation. We're not going to argue over that. But I would love him to get a real slot that can separate, which is why I love Wan'Dale Robinson. I would love for him to get a tight end that can separate, which is why I want one of these guys. I would love to see them add guys that give Jaden wide open targets. I love to see them go get a guy that can run past the defense. Terry can do it. Give him somebody opposite of Terry so that defenses just can't hone in on Terry. Give us another weapon. Give Jaden another weapon that can stretch the football field vertically. Lastly, offensive line. There's not a ton that needs to be done here, to be honest with you. I think they have a combination of developmental guys and enough veterans here that if they decided not to do anything on the offensive line, none of us would really be surprised by that. They do have some decisions to make. Nick Allegretti, for where he is, what he's making, they could cut him, save themselves a few bucks, like $4 million or so. I don't think it's necessary, to be honest with you. Andrew Wiley is a free agent. He served as our swing tackle, really your right tackle, and he could play both guard positions. He stepped in at guard last year for Sam Cosmi when he was out after they started off the season with damn, I just said his name. They started out the season with the damn guard from Kansas City. I don't know why I just blanked on his name after I just said it. But Wiley, to me, is still a valuable commodity. At 31 and a half years old, I wouldn't mind them bringing Andrew Wiley back. But I'll be honest with you. I could tell last year they wanted to go younger swing tackle, which is why they brought in Lucas Niang. They really wanted to see if he could develop into their new swing tackle. I really believe that the Commanders are only interested in two positions on the offensive line in free agency, if at all. One, tackle, swing tackle, right? I believe they're going to move on from Andrew Wiley. I believe that they're going to move on from what's the guy that caught the Jaden's first touchdown pass? They're going to move on from him. They signed George Fant last year. They're going to move on from him. And so it leaves that tackle position. Now, again, keep in mind that Brandon Coleman can still play tackle if need be, but I think they envision his future as a guard. And I think in this new system, Trent Scott, thank you, Lee Lewis. Trent Scott's going to be gone. George Fant going to be gone. And I think Andrew Wiley's gone. Lucas Niang could be brought back, but he's coming off of a major injury. So it's something to watch. But Brandon Coleman can still double as a tackle. But I think this new offensive scheme gives him a chance to weasel his way back into the starting lineup as the left guard. Nick Allegretti was the other guy I was trying to think of, and I couldn't. So Allegretti's still here. I wouldn't move on from him. They could if they wanted to. I don't see the need to do that. Chris Paul, obviously the elephant in the room. Only offensive lineman not currently under contract that was a starter a year ago. Let me just say this too before we get into this list real quick. If we were up and running as a functional organization, which is what we strive to be, if we were already up and running, say this was year 4 or 5 of the program, then you should be drafting the replacement for Tyler Biotish this year. Because you know his contract is up next year. He's getting up there in age. I don't know how you feel about how he's aging and how he's going to age. Some guys age gracefully, others not so much. But if you were running the type of program that instead of trying to survive, you were thriving, this is when you would draft a center. Sit him, develop him. Next year, he's your starting center. We're not in a position to do that. We got too many holes. We're just trying to survive. All right. We'll get there eventually. But Paul is a guy that 27.2 years of age, had a breakout year last year after finally getting an opportunity to start and made the most of it. The question now is, is he right for this system that they're going to? I don't think he is. Again, he earned the right to have a chance to compete. And so I think you have to bring Chris Paul back, keep the continuity of the offensive line intact, allow him to compete with Brandon Coleman for the left guard position. And if Chris Paul somehow isn't back, and obviously of all the offensive linemen, Chris Paul is the top option for the Commanders to bring back, right, to sign. I think a good secondary option is Spencer Burford from San Francisco. 25.6 years of age, utility man, Swiss Army knife, offensive lineman, can play a multitude of positions. And again, Paul might not fit the direction of the offensive line. And you may feel like, okay, this is the perfect opportunity for Brandon Coleman, and Burford could come in and be his backup and be that utility offensive lineman. So Andrew Wiley is an option, 31 and a half years old. Josh Nijman, who I talked about last year, I think I talked about the year before that, from Green Bay, now then went to Carolina. Josh Nijman is 30 years old, right in that swing tackle pocket age, right? Seems like guys that understand their role. We got Cornelius Lucas late in the game. We got Ty and Secchi late in the game, and they turned out to be two of the best swing tackles in all of football. Josh Nijman is hitting that age where he's figuring it out. Can play both sides. That's a guy that I would target if you're looking to have, the flexibility of somebody that can play both sides. Lucas Niang at 27 and a half years old, obviously was a guy that they brought in here, wanted to see what he could do, got injured. Not sure if you want to continue down that path to see what he looks like post-injury, but that's a name. And as I mentioned, Spencer Burford, 25.6 years of age. San Francisco's probably going to want him back. I think you could easily go and snatch him up if Chris Paul isn't the option. But Paul feels like the guy you bring back, right? So that's the offensive line. I really don't see them doing too much more than that, because they still have guys on the roster that specifically on the interior, which is why I think they should be looking for a tackle, because they still have a guy that they spent some good money on the interior in what was it? McGee or McKee? McKee, I think it is. Out of NC State. Yeah, the guard last year. So, yeah. I think tackle, swing tackle is the one position that they'll have to attack, assuming Chris Paul is brought back. Anyway, I digress. That was pretty comprehensive. I knew it would be. We're going to get to a quick commercial break. Come back on a couple of commercial breaks. Come back on the other side, jump into the comment section, and then we will get out of here. Feel like I'm a broken record. New year, same conversation, same body odors. If we're on a scale of 1 to 10, some of you are walking around with body odors on 5 or 8. God forbid you hit 10. How about you bring it down to 0 by using MANDO? So whether you're here, over here, or even over there, MANDO has you covered to keep you smelling fresh to tackle the day. So if you're ready to change your body odor game and come clean, head over to shopmando.com and use my promo code LouieT. That's shopmando.com, LouieT as the promo code. SHOPMANDO.com. LouieT is the promo code. Trust me, body odors don't stand a chance when you use MANDO. Sleeper is the best way to experience and connect over sports together. It's a one-stop shop for all of your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat in the games in real time with other users, get the fastest scores, blazing fast news and alerts right at your fingertips. Play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports the way they were meant to, together. Download the #1 sports app today. Predict the hottest football stats like passing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy football skills. Use promo code LTN and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Sleeper. All right, so big shout out to a couple of our sponsors tonight, MANDO, Sleeper. Big shout out to them for sponsoring this stream. And promo codes all in the description, links in the description of this video. Check out those products. You won't be sorry. So let's get to the comment section and see what you guys have to say. Start off with Jim Sleazy. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Jim writes, can we talk about LB's rant on the hurt haters? I don't even know what you're talking about. I honestly could give 2 shits about what anybody is talking about in terms of the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts. Doesn't move the needle for me. Like, that's a Philadelphia Eagles fan problem, not a Commanders fan problem. So I got nothing for you. It doesn't move me. That'll be something that Eagles fans will have to reconcile with, because he's already done the thing that was supposed to give him validation. So if you're still seeking it after the man has won a Super Bowl and Super Bowl MVP, I don't know what to say to you, right? So it's going to be an ongoing debate. That's all I can say. My thing has always been and will continue to be is that Eagles fans want to put him somewhere he doesn't belong, and that's always going to be the issue. But as far as him going on a rant, I have no idea what you're speaking about. Doug Alicious, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Doug? Hope you and the fam are well. Likewise. I ran into Tress Way at the gym today, and I was shaking in my boots. I don't know why I got so starstruck. Nice guy. And the thing about it is, of all the people to get starstruck at, Tress isn't that guy. Like, I don't know him. Like, So I don't want to sit here and make it, but you can just tell he's an approachable dude, man. Like, you don't have to be, but that's human nature. Like, don't feel bad about being nervous. That's human nature. I don't care who you are. If you see somebody famous, you know, someone that you deem famous, because somebody famous to you could be somebody to me that I'm like, I don't give a shit who that is. I don't care. But someone that you deem famous or hold in high regard, you see that person and, you know, and you've been watching him on television, you know, et cetera, so forth and so forth. You're going to be, you know, heartbeat's going to tick up a bit. You're going to get a little jittery. That's human nature. But to your point, he's a cool dude. Like, I'm pretty sure he just, hey man, big fan of yours. He'd chop it up with you for a little while, whatever. Like, I imagine that was a pretty smooth encounter. And I've said this before, Tress Way basically can name his job when he's done playing football. He wants to work in the media for the Commanders, name it. If he wants to go back to Oklahoma, become the mayor, do it. If he wants to go back to Oklahoma, call their games for their local broadcast, done. Like, he could probably even go back to Oklahoma and become the athletic director of their, you know, sports program. Like, he's that guy. Tress Way is that likable and that smart. He gets it. So people like that usually are pretty easy to talk to. So I'm glad you met him. I'm glad he was a cool dude. Every bit as cool as what you probably envision him being in person. That's awesome. That's awesome. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy JP writes, Lou, good to see you as always. Always great to hear from you, JP. If they're truly serious about tight end, we better get Likely or Njoku. Herb Pitts and Breece Hall are both getting tagged. I don't think that Breece Hall, Pitts, or Alec Pierce, these are three of the biggest names on the offensive side of the football in free agency. They're definitely the three biggest names at their respective positions. I don't think any of them make it to free agents. Pitts gets tagged. Breece Hall, more likely than not, gets tagged if they can't reach a long-term deal with him prior. And I think Alec Pierce, I think the Colts move on from Michael Pittman Jr., create the space they need to slap the franchise tag on Alec Pierce or work out a long-term deal with him. And he doesn't get the free agency either. So, yeah. Tight end. I'm not the biggest Njoku fan at this point. I wouldn't be upset if that's where they decided to go. He's not highlighted for me because of his age and injury history, but they better come away with something worth having at tight end. That's the one position, if they don't come away offensively, it's the one position, if they don't get something, I'm going to be pretty pissed. Like actually mad. I might be disappointed if they don't come away with something at receiver or running back. I might be disappointed, but I'm going to be pissed if they don't get something at tight end. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Video channel writes, Lou, Chig Okonkwo, video channel, has more production in this league than Likely. Yes, he does. And that's with subpar quarterbacks. He has the speed 4.5. Would love to see him as TE1. He has more production, but keep in mind, he's always been basically TE1 on a Titans offense that has not featured any receivers. Can you name the Titans' number one wide receiver? You're a football watcher. You probably can. But most fans can't name the Titans' number one receiver. I bet you couldn't name the Titans' number one receiver prior to this year. Again, Chig Okonkwo was essentially their de facto number one receiver. Now, they got some young guys that they like that they were throwing the football to this year, but Chig Okonkwo, for all intents and purposes, has been the guy. Meanwhile, Isaiah Likely has been behind one of the most prolific pass catching tight ends in all of football, and Mark Andrews his entire career. And so, again, it's easy to look at the production and just go, well, he's way more productive. I would love to see Likely here over Okonkwo. I would take either of them in a heartbeat, though. Either of them. Wouldn't blink if you told me Chig was here instead of Likely. Just give me one of these dudes, okay? Just give me an athlete at the tight end position, please. Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Duncan writes, turn on the TV, no football. It's not because of aliens or Godzilla. Lord have mercy. Where is this going? It's because the season is over, so why are you still talking? Come on, man. If that's the case, why are you here? You know why? I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Because you're a fan of this team. Just admit it. You love us. That's why you're here. We love us. Duncan Wright, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Who writes, you hear Giants owner Steve Tisch is in the Epstein files. I think he should sell the team. What you think? At the latest, I'm assuming that's what that's supposed to be. Look, we can't really fully grasp everything that has to do with the Epstein files because everything hasn't been released. We're just getting tidbits, this, that, and the third. We don't really know anything. I'm not shocked by anybody that is either rumored to be or actually is in the Epstein files. None of that surprises me. Okay. Especially if you're an old white man with a bunch of money and have had a lot of money for a lot of years. That it wouldn't surprise me at the least. But again, you can't force him to sell the team, right? It's an individually run organization. It's independently run of the NFL. And the NFL is 32 independently run organizations that come together to form the faction known as the NFL. So just like the NFL couldn't force Daniel Snyder to sell, they could do things that would make it tough for him, or they could insinuate to him, hey, it'd be in your best interest to sell. But if Snyder decided he didn't want to sell, he wouldn't have to sell. So short of criminal charges, which the likelihood of any of that arising from the Epstein files happens, he doesn't have to sell the team, and he won't. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, why wouldn't AP want to spend big on running back? A number of reasons why. First of all, most general managers, not all, most general managers believe in the philosophical belief that running back is not a position that you invest heavy, financial dollars into. See the Seahawks. Their general manager, who's one of the best in football, John Schneider, track record of not re-signing running backs. Don't care how well you've played, we can find another guy and not going to franchise tag you. That's not how everybody feels, but Adam Peters strikes me, and again, I'm just going off of where he's been. If you look at, and again, he's his own man. He can have his own philosophical beliefs. That's why I said this year is huge, because we're going to find out. We really don't know where he stands on the value of the running back. We don't really know. I think we'll find out a lot about what he feels about that position in particular by how he approaches it this offseason. Because honestly, we've probably needed a running back since he got here. Even when B-Rob was here, we could have used a running back. They went and got Austin Eckler, cheap option. And that might have been more of Cliff, but whatever. Still was a cheap addition to this team. Cost you pennies on the dollar. We needed a running back last year. We kept saying it. It's the one position that we really spent so much time on the offensive side of the football in the draft talking about oh my God, what a running back could do if you pair him with Jaden. And they spent a 7th round pick on running back. Again, I'm a big Bill fan, but there were options. There were things they could have done, and they decided, yeah, we're good. We'll go with a 7th rounder instead. He came from New England. Look at what they did at running back while Brady was there. Call them the Brady backs. Running back by committee. Every type of running back you could think of, from Kevin Falk to Danny Woodhead to James White, they had him in New England. There was never a dominant running back while Tom Brady was there. All right. Bunch of different guys came through there. He goes on to Denver. Denver's never had a dominant back since Terrell Davis, probably. They've had guys that have had years. They haven't had a dominant guy that's been there for 4, 5, 6 years. They tried with Javonte Williams, but it didn't work. So that's another place where Ronnie Hillman, we saw what they did when they won the Super Bowl. Ronnie Hillman and all these different kinds of guys, right? What's the running back? Noshawn Moreno, right? All these random ass running backs. Then he goes to San Francisco. And they were doing that whole running back by committee shit. And then Kyle said, I got a chance to go get Christian McCaffrey. I'm going to end all this bullshit. Because McCaffrey ain't just a running back. He catch it just as good as he do running the shit. I could use him as a receiver. We saw that this year. That's the one time he was a part of a program where they went out and they spent real resources on a running back. But that's not just any running back. It's a future Hall of Famer if he can just stay healthy. I think he's one of these general managers that doesn't feel like there's real value in spending big money on running backs, especially in free agency. I'm not saying he's not going to spend any money. I just don't think he wants to spend big money. Thus, I think he's going to look not to that elite top tier of running backs that'll be available in free agency. I think he's going to look that next tier down, which is where you find a guy like Rachaad White. That's where I think he'll be looking. Tyler Algier, Kenneth Gainwell, he'll be shopping in that mix somewhere, is what I think. He'll leave the Breece Halls, if he's available, Kenneth Walker III's and the Travis Etienne's. He'll lead those guys to the teams that have big money that are looking to spend frivolously. In his mind, I can get me a good deal on Rachaad White, feel good about it, and move on to another position that we got to attack. That's what I think his thought process is. And again, he won't be alone if that's his thought process. 80% of the general managers in football feel that way when it comes to the running back position. It's the reason why running backs are still the least paid in the league. It's the reason why running backs 2 years ago felt like they had to put together a coalition where they were putting together phone calls and meetings talking about what we're going to do. What are we as running backs going to do to come together to get us paid, get us more money, what we feel like we deserve? Because the league as a whole, they're lowballing us. That's why I think he's not going to spend money. Because he thinks like most general managers. I can find him running back. I can find him running back in the 5th round, the 6th round, the 7th round. Or I could sign one of these dudes that ain't going to cost me a whole hell of a lot and be straight. And he's not wrong. But as a fan, we see this dynamic back going into the prime of his career. And we're like, bro, it don't cost a ton. Running backs ain't breaking the bank. This ain't $27 million a year. This ain't $21 million a year. Shit, it ain't even $15 a year. You won't spend $13 million, $14 million a year on K9 or Breece Hall? That's what we saying. And he's like, hell no. Hell no. I just gave that kind of money to an edge rusher. I'm not giving that to no damn running back. And that's the mindset. That's the mindset. They spent, I think it was 2 years, $7 million for Austin Eckler. 2 years, 8, something like that. That's the kind of money he's comfortable spending. Now, he's going to have to spend a little bit more on Rachaad White. It'll be more like 2 years, 14 and a half, 2 years, 15 million, 2 years, 16 million, 3 years, 24 million for Rachaad White. It's not going to be 2 years, 8 million, 2 years, 9 million. It'll be a little bit more. It'll be $7-8 million a year, something like that, probably. But that's his range. That's what he's looking to spend. Not 11, 12, 13, 14, which is what it's going to cost if a Breece Hall makes it to free agency or a K9. Suds, stand up. You are the newest member of the MOBB mob. You know what to do. Show Suds some love. Welcome them with open arms. Show them what it's like to be a member of the greatest squad in the land, the mob. Welcome to the squad. Sudsy. Glad to have you on board. Commanders Super Bowling 27. I like the sound of that. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. All right. Sup, Lou? My name says it all. Hashtag SOTG. Hashtag raise hell. Your name says it all. I'm with it. Let's start that process right now. I'm with it. By attacking free agency with some of these guys that we've talked about tonight. Let's go get it. I'm with it. Sign me up. Stephen Dent, been a member for 15 months, who writes, PFSN GM, thank me later. You got me. Hands up, Steve. You got me. I have no idea what you're referring to. James LaRue, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. James writes, Woolen makeup speed fits our scheme so well. We will talk about the defensive side on the next big show. Got to figure out when that will be, whether that's tomorrow, next week. We'll see. But we're definitely going to talk about the cornerback position, the linebacker position, edge rusher, D-line, safety. Like, we could use everything. So we'll see what the options are and which ones feel like the most viable here in Washington. William Rogers Jr., thank you for being a member for 42 months. Salute. Who writes, Tyquan Thornton, 4.28 speed, 40 time, equals 2.8 million spot rack projection. Again, it's not going to cost you a lot of money. He was an afterthought when Kansas City signed him to a 1-year deal last year. And I thought he earned every bit of whatever they were paying him, right? Nobody wanted Tyquan Thornton. He was a failed bust of a second-round pick from New England. He was just looking for an opportunity. The Chiefs gave him a chance, and I thought the dude took his role and crushed it and should have had a lot more production last year if Mahomes could actually throw a deep ball, which I don't know what happened to Mahomes in deep ball the last 4 or 5 years, but it's just been off. Like I said, sign me up for some Tyquan Thornton, bro. You want some speed? You want a guy that can take the top off the defense? It ain't too many dudes in the league picking them up and putting them down faster than Tyquan Thornton and getting behind the defense. Go watch him last year. See how he was cooking DBs and getting behind guys. He'll never be the number one guy. You ain't focused on Tyquan Thornton, and by the time you realize it, you flat-footed, he running by you. Lionheart Los, been a member for 45 months. Salute to Lionheart Los, who writes, Lou, hope all is well with you and the fam. Likewise. going a little off topic, off the top of your head, which season would you say was Terry's best season pre-JD5? Man, you're choosing from 2 seasons, right? It's either the 2022 or 1. Let me see. I'm gonna tell you which one it is. I think it's 22. We played the Colts that year. Did we play the Titans that year? Colts, Texans. Yeah. It had to be 2021 because we played the AFC South in 2020, the year that everybody should have made the playoffs. I want to say it was 22 because that was the Daniel Jones year and Daboll's first year in New York. That was Ron's 3rd year, or was it his 2nd year? So Ron's first year was the playoff year in 2020. His 2nd year, he went out and got, it had to be the 3rd year because he went out and got Fitzpatrick. That didn't go well in 21. But Heineke played really well that year. So it was 21 then. It was 21. I think that was 21. I don't want to cheat. I just remember him having to catch over Stephon Gilmore in his hometown and saying, "This is my shit." And do we play the AFC South in 26? No, right? We played the AFC West this past year, right? Raiders, Chiefs, yeah. So that would mean we played those teams in 21. So that had to be 22. It had to be 22 when the whole division played the AFC South and the NFC South, I believe. And everybody should have made the playoffs, but we didn't. Everybody else did. So 22 with Heineke, with the Terry's down there somewhere shirts. And then 19, which is his rookie season. To me, and while 19, he didn't eclipse 1,000 yards, he would have that year if not for missing the final basically 2 games of the season with the concussion. He was the most explosive we had ever seen was his rookie season. Remember, he came out the gates. Eagles game, week 1. Jay Gruden hit him all preseason, talked about him having a injury. I want to say it was like a ass bone injury or something. He fell and Jay Gruden just put him in bubble wrap and then unleashed him in week 1 in case Keenum missed him like twice for deep balls. He already had cooked his future teammate, Ronald Darby, on the first, possession of the game or something. I don't know. It was either Vernon Davis with the catch and run, jump over the dude on the sideline, score, or if Terry's touchdown was first. One of the two was first. But we jumped out on them boys, and then Deshaun Jackson got a big touchdown right before the half, and it all went to hell in a handbasket. But Terry got behind him again to start the second half, and Case Keenum overshot him by 20 yards. He was supposed to have a massive year that year, but he caught the slant against the Eagles in his rookie season. We ain't seen Terry catch a slant and murk since then, right? He had one against the Steelers in 24 where he caught a slant and he took off, but he got caught from behind. He caught that bitch against the Eagles and took off in his rookie season. He got behind defenses consistently in his rookie season. And then 2022, was by far and away the other year. Its best year is 22. If we just being honest, it's 22. But I love 19 because it showed how explosive he could be. And it really came out of nowhere. It really came out of nowhere. Shadow Striker 789. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, even with a good offer, Kittle being older and having a torn Achilles, in my eyes, totally kills a Tonjes trade, especially with how he played as tight end one. Well, you're not trading for him. They're going to put, so he's a restricted free agent, meaning they have the right of first refusal. So they could theoretically, slap a tender on him and say, hey, go out there and find a deal, bro. And then he goes out, finds a really good deal. Somebody says, hey, Jake Tonjes, man, we saw what he did last year. Hey, Jake, we got this 3-year, $19 million deal sitting here for you, bro, if you want it. And Tonjes is like, hell yeah, I'll take that shit. Or 3 years, $21 million, $7 a year, right? And Tonjes is like, hell yeah. Let me get that shit. And the 49ers are like, damn, we ain't want to do it. But yeah, all right, we'll match that. And he stays in San Francisco. Or they could slap a second round tender on him. And that same deal hits. And they're like, oh, hell no, we ain't paying Jake Tonjes $7 million a year. But we'll take that second round pick, though, if you're willing to actually sign him. Who giving up a second round pick for Jake Tonjes? Nobody. So, and they know that. So the likelihood that Jake Tonjes isn't tendered, slim and none. He'll be in San Francisco again next year. Hard for me to envision a situation where he's not in San Francisco next year. Anyway, I digress. That was the last super chat, which means it's time for me to go. 2 hours and 30 minutes. I knew it was going to be a long show, but it was worth it. We went over the offensive side of the football. I really, truly believe that you're going to see this team be extremely active. So just to recap, quarterback, I expect them to re-sign Marcus Mariota. If they don't, Mitchell Trubisky and Tyler Huntley. Huntley would be my backup choice, are your two options backing up Jaden Daniels. Again, Marcus Mariota should be back. I expect him back. If he's not back, Tyler Huntley makes the most sense. Excuse me. Running back, tons of options. Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker III, Rachaad White, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Gainwell, Tyler Algier, Keaton Mitchell as a restricted free agent. Breece Hall probably won't make it to free agency, but all these other backs will. I expect Rachaad White to be the guy that they sign here. And it wouldn't shock me if Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols are brought back. I expect Rodriguez back, maybe not McNichols, but both back wouldn't shock me. Also, look out for Kenneth Gainwell, Tyler Algier as secondary options for the Commanders at the running back position. Wide receiver, Jawan Jennings, Alec Pierce, Wan'Dale Robinson, Romeo Doubs, Tyquan Thornton, De'Ami Brown, Jalen Naylor, Traylon Burks, Tutu Atwell, just to name a few. Tons of receivers available. I expect the Commanders to come away with at least one, if not two of these guys. Traylon Burks definitely back, so that's one. I think Jalen Speedy Naylor could be another name to keep an eye on. Same with Romeo Doubs. I keep talking about adding speed. Tyquan Thornton makes a ton of sense if you're just trying to get faster. Same could be said about Tutu Atwell. Wan'Dale Robinson, would love to add him in the slot. Don't see it happening. I think he's going to end up in Tennessee with his former head coach, now turned offensive coordinator, Brian Daboll. But that's another story for another day. They're going to come away with at least one, if not two receivers from that crop there. Tight end, tons of opportunities here to bolster this roster. You just need one, not like receiver or even running back where you could get multiple guys. You just need one tight end. Kyle Pitts, Isaiah Likely, Chig Okonkwo, Kate Otten, Greg Dulcich, Jake Tonjes are the names that stand out. Tonjes feels like a long shot. He's a restricted free agent. Don't see San Francisco letting him walk. Kyle Pitts feels like a long shot. Feels like he's going to get the franchise tag. Isaiah Likely, Chigakonkwo, K-Dot, and Greg Dulcich are guys, and David Njoku, even though I'm not the biggest fan of him at this point, are all guys that make a ton of sense. Isaiah Likely feels the most likely to be a Washington Commander. And then offensive line-wise, you're probably going to move on from Andrew Wiley. You're probably going to move on from all of the, tackles, Trent Scott, George Fant. So you need a swing tackle. Yosh Nijman makes a ton of sense. Could they bring back Lucas Niang? That's a possibility. But the elephant in the room is Chris Paul. He's the last piece to complete the offensive line. You bring him back. The offensive line from last year is intact. If you don't, Spencer Burford is a backup offensive lineman that was in San Francisco the last 4 years. He would make a ton of sense as a guy that could come in here, compete, but more specifically be a backup at that guard spot if you should decide to not bring back Chris Paul. So that is essentially the recap of the offense. We're going to do the same thing for the defensive side of the football. And we'll figure out when that will be, whether that's tomorrow, Friday, or some other day, whatever the case may be. You guys enjoy the rest of your evening. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. You guys have a good one. Take care. Y'all know what it is. Post up. Take command. God bless. Good night.